All right, come on down, my friends. It is time for yet another episode of the Red Delta Project podcast and live feed Q&A here on the Red Delta Project YouTube channel, where we take a fundamental approach to fitness to simplify diet and exercise, giving you more power, control, and freedom over your healthy lifestyle. As always, I'm Matt Schifferly, and today's episode is brought to you by the fine folks over at Fat Poke Fitness and their new ebook, Next Level Fitness. Train smarter, break through plateaus, achieve your goals. You can read the first chapter absolutely free at the link down below in the description. So today's episode is a new workout format that I've been using. Well, it's hardly new. I've been doing this for quite a while with clients and stuff in the gym, and it's something I've been tweaking and kind of messing around with, and I think it's finally something that I can unleash upon the masses here. I made a video about it that kind of scratched the surface on what this is about on the RDP YouTube channel. So if you kind of want the cliff notes, just go check out the latest video that I've put up. But today we're going to dive into it a little bit more in depth. And of course, as always, you have the ability to write in with your questions and I can answer them so we can really get to the meat of what this is and why it's going to bring some refreshing new spice into your workouts, especially with calisthenics, because it helps to kind of mitigate two of the biggest problems that often come about with calisthenics training. The first of which is way too much rep chasing, where you just keep going rep after rep or even set after set, and it's just tons of volume. Sometimes some referred to as junk volume, where, yeah, you're doing work and you're putting in effort, but is it really actually moving the needle? Is it doing any good, or are you just working for the sake of work? And the second issue that often runs across people is either A, they don't have enough variety in their calisthenics training. So they're doing push-ups and their push-ups are always the same and they never change anything and it's always the same pushing variation. Or they have too much of variations of basic techniques like push-ups, but there's little tweaks to them. And actually what they're doing is just creating a lot of redundancy. This happens a lot with pull chain training, where people will be like, okay, so when I do my pull-ups, we used to have this pull-up bar at the gym with all these different grips. And they'd be like, I do 3 sets of 10 at this grip and 3 sets of 10 at that grip and 3 sets of 10 on this grip. And they're changing their hand placement and position a little bit to alter the flavor of the exercise. But ultimately, it's not really doing anything all that different. You just basically did about, a gazillion sets of basically the same exercise. It's kind of like saying, all right, for dinner tonight, I'm going to have chicken, and then I'm going to have chicken nuggets, and then I'm going to have chicken cordon bleu, and then I'm going to have chicken strips and chicken thighs. And like, how many different ways can you have chicken? It's kind of like the scene from Forrest Gump where he's naming off all the different kinds of shrimp that you can produce. It's like, great, awesome, but it's really not that different as far as your body's concerned. So what this new workout format will do is it's kind of a little bit along the lines of GSC, because it is birthed from the same objective. And that objective is trying to kind of combine a decent amount of volume and intensity in the same workout. Because for the most part, when it comes to strength training, volume and intensity are kind of like on this dichotomy teeter-totter between the two of each other. If you have a lot of one, you don't have much of the other. So you can go really, really heavy and hard, but you can't do that for very long or very many sets or a lot of repetitions. Or you could have a good amount of volume, but the intensity, there's no way it's going to be there. You simply cannot sprint a marathon. And I know a lot of times people will say, oh no, I definitely have a lot of intensity with a lot of volume. And it's like, no, you think you have intensity. That's the thing I used to tell myself. Like when I used to have bike races that would be like 2-3 hours, I'm like, oh man, I sprinted the whole thing. And then I got into actual sprint mountain bike races that were like 10 minutes long. And I was like, holy smokes, I thought I knew what high intensity was. But then with this much shorter duration, now I really understand what that's like. That doesn't mean you're not working hard and really pushing yourself with the higher volume stuff, but it's just simply not possible to do both. However, when I created the GSC program, it was a little bit of a way to do both, because you just simply change gears on how you're approaching your exercises in the 4 phases of each workout. You got your tension phase and your stability phase as your warm-ups to warm up your nervous system and create stability. But then you have your strength phase, and that's going hard and heavy. So that's intensity. And then once your intensity starts to falter a little bit, then you shift into your more of your hypertrophy phase. Much lighter exercises, things you can do for 12 repetitions, 15 repetitions, light exercises like that, and you just burn out the muscle pretty quick. So collectively throughout the entire workout, you're getting a good amount of volume, but at the same time, you're also going with a good amount of intensity. So you seemingly get the best of both worlds. So that's what this new workout's also about, is trying to combine both to at least some degree, so there's not too much of a compromise there. Because especially when it comes to trying to build some sort of physique, you want a good range of things. You want a little bit of both. One of the biggest handicaps that holds people back is they get stuck into one type of training modality and they keep hitting their muscles one way. Either they've believed it themselves or someone has said, okay, high volume is the way to go, or high intensity is the way to go. Both are correct. You need both in your training to some degree. And some people will do better with more of one or the other, but it is a mistake to say, I just do high volume or high intensity, and the other is complete BS, and that's not at all true or the case. So here's how this works. Let's get down into the brass tacks here. Like all workouts here at RDP, we base things off of the 6 tension chains, which makes programming and organizing workouts a hell of a lot easier. Instead of thinking of individual muscles or movements kind of thing, we have tension chains, and we have 3 movement chains. That's push, pull, and squat. So pushing is anything where your hands are going away from you. Pulling is anything your hands are coming towards you. And squatting is any type of movement where your hip and your heel are coming closer together. So you can apply this to any method. It's not just calisthenics. Or fundamentally, strength training doesn't depend on the method. I don't care if you're doing calisthenics or bands or free weights or whatever. Fundamentally, it's all the same thing. You're still just making your muscle contract pretty hard for a certain amount of time. It shouldn't matter what you do. Now, I know a lot of people are like, it totally matters. It shouldn't. That's the thing, is when we get too lost in a method-based approach, we create differences where ideally there shouldn't be. And most of the time, you're the one creating the difference, not the method in question. So we've got those 3 things. We got push, pull, squat for our movement chains, and we got flexion, extension, and lateral for our support chains, or the anatomical anterior, posterior, lateral chains, if you like to use it that way. I base the names off of the job of the exercises. Now, you can do this any way you like. I'm going to explain it today in more of kind of a full body approach, but you can split this up however you want. Some people will do a split where we have movement chains one day, support chains another day. A common GSC programming split that I use in the GSC program is we have each day has 1 movement and 1 support chain. So push and flexion work well together. Extension and pull work well together. And then lateral and squat work well together because they kind of work at the same time. Like our flexion chain is working as we do our push-ups, extension chain when we're doing our rows, and our lateral chain, our hips, especially with squatting techniques, particularly things like shrimp squats, pistol squats. But really, at the end of the day, just get the work in however you want. Over the course of a week, you're going to get the same result regardless. It's more, a workout program is based more about what fits your schedule. Like a lot of times, the routine that works is the routine you just like to do, or that just somehow fits your schedule and it's something you stick to. It's not about having some sort of scientific, mathematical, beautiful mind formula or trying to hack into some sort of a crazy complicated workout. It's just what allows you to just hit the muscle consistently over time, a couple times a week, 2-3 times a week, whatever you want. Doesn't really matter. Just hit the damn thing. So it's something that we are using for a approach of full body split training, however you like, but it's based on those chains. And here's why, is we're going to start off, and you can start off with the GSC warm-up of tension creation through isometrics and shifting and stuff. It's a very good warm-up, just takes a few moments. It's very, very quick. And then what you're going to do is you're going to select 1 basic fundamental movement pattern. Let's say for this, we're going to do a movement chain. So push, pull, squat. So we need a push exercise. We'll say classic push-ups. Good, awesome. We need a pull exercise. We'll say rows. Awesome. And we need a squatting chain movement. And whatever you want, lunges, squats, jumping, leg press, goblet squats, back squats. Really, it's not important. Just squat something, some way, shape, or form. So here's how this is going to play out, though. You have 2 working sets. That's it. This is one of the few times in a workout that I'm giving you a finite amount of sets, because When it comes to creating a stimulus in our muscles, I've always much preferred a more flexible, open-ended approach because there's a million reasons why you would need more sets or less sets based on personality, based on your training style, based on your preference, based on your energy level, based on your time. There's a million reasons to do more. There's a million reasons to do less. So I like having an open-ended approach. That way you don't get stuck in a dogmatic approach. But this is one of the few examples where I'm saying you're limiting yourself to 2 work sets. That's it. That's all you are going to get. Now, there's a reason for this, is because when we approach volume training or even an open-ended approach, we're kind of taking the pressure off of ourselves to push ourselves. Because in the back of our minds, we're like, oh, that was a good set, but I'll really push it in the next one. I'll get it on the next one. I'll really push it on the next one. It's like putting off homework, right? It's like, that was pretty good, but I'll save a few for the next set and stuff. I don't want you to do that. Part of the reason why this works is because you get 2 shots at this and you've got to bring the oatmeal, so to speak. You've got to bring it. If you're in your second set and you're getting tired, you're like, well, do you want to stop? It's like, I can't stop. This is it. Like, I know you like to wait until the last minute, but this is literally the last minute. If you don't make it happen here, it ain't going to happen. Now, I do allow a little bit of flexibility for this because, like I said, 2 work sets. So sometimes I'll have someone do this exercise or this workout, and they'll do like, their push-ups, and they'll get like 15 push-ups. And then the next one, they're just crushing it. And they really, really drive themselves in. And like, that first one kind of felt like it was a bit of a warm-up set. Let's get one more just to make sure you don't have another work set in you. But ideally, what you're trying to do is create what I like to call fast fatigue. Fast fatigue is when you burn your muscles so hard and so fast that after 2 sets, you pretty much smoked them for what they're worth. So if you tried that 3rd set, like you get down on the floor and you're like, yeah, push-ups, all right, crush it, first set. Whoa, all right, got it. And then the second one, oh man, this is really crush it, all right, got it. And then that 3rd one, you're like, wonder if I got that. And the second you get on the floor and you go down, you're like, oh God, oh jeez, like your muscles are just like, mercy, no, wave the white flag. Like, sure, you could do another set. Sure, you can do more and stuff, but you want a very fast drop off in your capacity to do that exercise. If you're going like 10 repetitions, set after set, I'm sorry, but you're just not pushing yourself that very hard. And yes, there's times and places for that sort of thing, like with German volume training and stuff. But when people are like, oh yeah, I do like 8 to 12 repetitions and I get like 9 sets, I'm like, you're not pushing yourself too hard. You're just not, because if you did, you would be completely smoked. That's what we're looking for. It's kind of like back in the day with bike racing. I did a bike race one time because it's a fundamentally universal thing with muscles. If you really push them hard and fast, you shouldn't have much left over. And I did this one race. It was a dirt crit. So it was mountain biking, but it's what they call a crit, which is a very short course, really good spectator sport because everybody just stands in the middle and they watch you go around. And it was going up a ski hill and then down a ski hill on some slalom gates and stuff. And it was a lot of fun. And I ended up winning the race. But the reason why I won it was because I thought someone was always right on my tail. But what I didn't know, because it was such a short course, I lapped everybody. I was pushing myself to my absolute limit and I was lapping everybody around. And of course, I always had someone behind me because I was already always passing people. So I ended up winning and it took everything I had. I remember thinking, like, I got to the finish line and I was like, please tell me that's it. And they're like, yep, you're done. You won. I'm like, thank God. And I just collapsed on the grass right there. The next day, I kid you not, the next day, I struggled to climb a flight of stairs. That's how shot my legs were. And we had a race that day. And I was like, okay, I crushed everybody in the last race. And as soon as they said go, I was like, nope, there's no way in hell I'm going to be able to compete with this. I just had nothing in the tank. And I went from crushing people the day before to coming in a very distant last by a mile. In fact, it wasn't quite last. I did beat one person, and that's because they had a flat tire. And that was the amount of discrepancy with how hard I pushed on day one to what I had left on day two. I mean, a staircase was enough to challenge me and get me out of breath. Be like, oh my God, I don't know if I can get up these stairs. My legs are that shot. That's what you're shooting for with this type of intensity. You're trying to lay it all out on the line on those 2 sets. You get 2 shots to do that. 3 if you really feel like you got one more work set in you, but do not leave it too open-ended, because I do not want you pacing yourself. I do not want you holding back. I want you going all out, speaking in tongues, everything you have level of intensity. So we do that with our push-ups, we do that with our rows, we do that with our squats. Then, rest as needed. We're not trying to just fly through this circuit. It's rest as needed because we want to put a lot of effort into it. So we do it again. That's your second set. Push-ups, rows, squats. Good. Okay. At that point, things should feel fairly worked, like you really pushed it. Now, here's where things get interesting. While the movement chains are resting, you go into the support chains if we're doing full body. Okay. You do the support chains. Now we'll have a flexion exercise. We'll say ab rollouts on a ab wheel. We'll have hip extensions or kettlebell swings or deadlifts or whatever, anything extending. And then we'll have lateral. And so we'll go with like a side plank on the gymnastics ring, holding that up 10 seconds each. Once again, 2 around. Now the support chains, they're not like the movement chains. It's not quite something that you're just going to go balls out with. Typically support chains are something you just need to work it to a decent degree. It doesn't need to be something you're speaking in tongues with. A lot of times you're not going to be able to get to that point, because if you look at a lot of support chain exercises like kettlebell swings, you're typically not pushing yourself to that level. Like you're doing your swings, you're firing them off, glutes good, and you're done. You're not typically getting to the point of like, and you're really just grinding out and barely getting those repetitions. So while that's working, the movement chains are resting. So we get those 2 sets. Now we're back to the movement chains again. And now here's the trick. We're going to hit the movement chains again. They should be pretty smoked, but you're going to use very different exercises. So this is how we're going to get around the redundancy. We're not going to go with a different pull-up, like a pronated pull-up to a neutral grip pull-up. No, we're going to change as much as we can about it. Change your angle of movement. So we had rows. Now we'll go with a vertical, let's say, where you're doing pull-ups or pull downs in the gym or whatever. Change the angle, change the speed, change the rep range, change whether you're going from bilateral to unilateral, using 2 limbs versus 1, and so on. Change as much of the exercise as you possibly can. That way you're getting a wildly different stimulus, but you're still using the same muscles because it's still either push, pull, or squat. And then you do it again. So now you've got a different exercise. Should feel a little bit more fresh. Your muscles have rested a little bit. And again, 2 sets. That's all you're going to get. Put your feet to the fire and go ham on it. And then again, you're going to repeat for the support chains with some other type of flexion exercise, extension, and lateral. So usually in about an hour with clients, I'll get 2 rounds of each, but you can break it up however you like, movement and support. It's kind of like a nice little micro workout. If you're really kind of pushing the tempo a little bit, you can get a couple of good sets in about 15, 20 minutes or so, good little micro workout, and you're done. Now, don't let it be deceptive though, because every time I've given this workout to people in the short term, they're like, oh my God, that totally kicked my ass. But shortly afterwards, they're like, I don't know if that was really enough, because they're used to like higher volume. They're used to just leaving the gym completely spent. But they're like, it's okay, I guess. But wait, because then the next day or 2 days later, I'll talk to them and they're like, oh my God, my muscles are they're sore, or they're responding to it, or I feel like they've been worked to a level that they didn't have before. Like my legs were really tired that night before bed and so on. So it's not something that's going to give you quite that immediate satisfaction leaving the workout, but it will in the long term, because you've effectively worked your muscle a lot harder than what you did before from an intensity standpoint, but you also got a decent amount of volume, a decent good amount of, so it's 4 sets in the workout for push, pull, and squat, and so on. You have that for 2, maybe 3 workouts throughout the week. That's a pretty decent amount of volume. It's not like high volume, like German volume training and stuff, but I would argue that in many cases, that may not be what you need anyway. But it's certainly going to be enough. It's certainly not low volume, that's for sure. So that's the basic idea behind it. Let's get into some questions and see if there's anything I can further address these sorts of ideas. But feel free to mix and match with whatever sort of exercises you like, whatever sort of method you like. This is just an open-ended type of workout format, and you can apply it to any type of methods that you like. Andre, coming on. Hey, Matt, could you explain a little more why 2 sets? The amount of sets one can do at a high level isn't correlated to his work capacity. Do you use any method to assess effort? So yeah, so the whole point of 2, as I was saying before, I'm sure you asked that question before I did explain it, is I want your pressure to be on. Like it's a mental thing. It's an emotional thing. If you know you've got more work ahead of you, you're going to pace yourself. You're going to have more of a tendency to not go to that extra limit. I noticed that whenever I employ this type of strategy, I would do an exercise and it's like, usually this is where I would stop. Usually this is where I would kind of around this rep range here, but I keep going. And that's the point, is I want you to go beyond what you normally would go for when it comes to your training. Henry, how's it going, my friend? How do I feel when the muscles have been adequately hit in both strength and finisher phase? I never trust myself. Good question. So this is something that's just kind of an acquired taste, as it were. But at the end of the day, you also want to look at your performance too. Like in a strength phase for GSC, let's say I'm doing commando pull-ups. That's a classic one that I like to do, where it's like 2 or 3 repetitions. And so I keep my strength phase repetitions real low. Like 5 would be considered light. If I could do an exercise 5 reps, that's a light set for me in strength phase kind of work. So you should feel like things are going downhill quick if you really hit it hard. It's like two or three, and then you grab onto that bar on the floor and the muscles are just like, dude, oh God. Like you want to feel exhausting your muscle out is the objective. And yeah, you can always get to that point where you're just going and going and going and going. But it's kind of like when, I used to do these 4th of July bike races as a kid, and I didn't understand pacing myself. And they weren't very long races. They were like 5K races kind of thing. And they'd say, go and shot. And I'd be going as fast as I possibly could, fast as I could. And then, of course, inevitably, my speed would start to come down and down and down. And then I would reach this cruising speed on my bike. And I would just basically hold on to that cruising speed for the rest of the race. Be aware if you hit a cruising level for your reps. So let's say for the strength phase on the pull-ups, you're getting like 6, 5, 3, and then it's just 3, 3, 3, 2, 3, 2, 2, 2, 3, 3. That's your cruising repetition, in other words, is what you can keep going. I wouldn't do that stuff. It's like you're not teaching your muscles anything beyond that. So you want to create that fatigue as hard as possible. And that's one of the reasons why this workout was created, was because a lot of people honestly just do not understand how to push their muscles to that level where they're creating that fast fatigue, because they're trying to pace themselves. They're trying to last. And this is what rep chasing kind of teaches us, or gets us in the habit of. I got to last. I got to be able to do more work. I want you to limit the work so you have the opportunity to explore much higher levels of intensity that you're pushing yourself to with each exercise. And yeah, you can always do more, but just because you can do more doesn't necessarily mean it's beneficial. You're there to teach your muscle to perform at a higher capacity. Once you've done that, there's not really a whole lot of reason to keep going, because it's kind of like arriving at a destination, driving to a destination, and then just driving endlessly circles in the parking lot of the office building. Like, I can keep driving. The goal is not to do work. The goal is to teach your muscles something. And when we understand that, then you're really training and not just doing manual labor. Frederico asking, hey, Matt, good to see you again. Thank you very much. What's going to be your next book released? Hopefully not too late. I've got the image format finally cleared on what I'm trying to do with it, and it's getting a lot faster now. So I'm on the pull chain exercises now for my suspension calisthenics book, and I'm very excited about it. Good one here from Dave. So Dave is asking him, would you consider kettlebell windmills to be a lateral chain exercise? I think so. Most anything, so lateral chain stuff, again, when we have the support chain, there's a lot more flexibility on what would qualify for that exercise, because suitcase carries. I've had people do single arm like cable rows and presses as a lateral exercise. kind of stuff, where it's like anything that's just working some sort of lateral or twisting stability would count as a lateral chain exercise in my book. And that certainly is kettlebell windmills for sure. Leroy the man is asking, hey, Matt, I've been training the Nordic curl for 2 months now, progress from assisted heavy assisteds and to an ultra light red band for 12 reps, but I can't progress to my own body weight. Tips? I've made videos on this. To be honest with you, I'm not a fan at all of the Nordic curl. I don't think it's a good exercise, to be perfectly honest and frank with you. I much prefer things like the suspension hamstring curls, largely because it's a hell of a lot more accessible. It's a lot easier to progress. And the way I see a lot of people do the Nordic curl, it reminds me of way back in the day when I first started working out as a trainer in gyms, and I didn't have any self-esteem or self-confidence in my ability to actually train people. There was this one guy I remember who was obsessed with bench pressing his own body weight or twice his body weight. I forget what it was, but he had this very fixed mindset on how much he had to bench press in order to pass a PT test. I think it was for a police force or something like that. He was this little mousy kid, and every time he would get on the bench press, he'd load up that amount of weight, and he had no business pressing that weight, none whatsoever. And he'd always ask me for a spot. And so what would end up happening is I would be over and I'd grab the bar and help him unrack it. And inevitably, he would do his best to do it. But basically, I was doing a bent over row with the weight. Like, it was way more weight than he should be lifting. Of course, back then, I didn't really understand and have the gumption to be like, dude, you really have no business pushing that kind of weight. Let's lighten it up and use real, actual overload, progressive overload in order to get you stronger. You're not going to get stronger with this. You're basically just struggling to survive under a heavy bar as I pull it off your chest kind of thing. And so that type of scenario is exactly what ends up happening with most people on the Nordic curl. They're not doing hamstring work. They're basically just trying to prevent themselves from falling with their hamstrings as good as possible. You're using a band, which is a hell of a lot smarter way to go about it. But again, now you got the whole setup thing. You got to have a pad, you got to have your feet anchored, you got to have a band that's anchored to something behind you kind of thing. It's just a real complicated, convoluted setup. The band is, you got your resistance curve to your strength curve, and are they matching up? That generally, I tell people, unless you really have your heart set on Nordic curls, just don't do them. Like, I don't recommend them. Every time someone are using it, I'm like, have you considered these before? Like, I just think there's a way better ways to go for the hamstrings. Hell, I would put you on a hamstring curl machine before I had you do Nordic curls. All right, I'm off my soapbox. If you wanted to get good at the Nordic curl kind of thing, stay with the bands, okay? And with any sort of progression, when you're looking at adding weight sort of thing, you have to get stronger at the resistance you're already using. So that red band that you're using right now, right? So what you're doing is use either a bigger range of motion, go with more forceful power. So come all the way down and pull harder as you're coming up with your hamstrings instead of coming up with the smooth and slow. Pull hard, because basically what you need to do is you need to make your muscles tense harder with the same resistance you're using. Don't forget, resistance does not create muscle tension. Your brain does that. So what you need to do to get stronger is keep creating more tension in the muscle. So you want to create more tension in the muscle with your current level of resistance. As you create more tension, the muscle is going to get stronger, and then you're going to be able to progress to less levels of assistance, aka more resistance. So bigger range of motion, super strict technique. Get a video camera, look and see if your hips are hinging, because that's another thing that often happens with the Nordic curl is people cheat and compromise their technique all over the place with that exercise, which again means it's not really as effective as they think it is. And get super strict with that. So super strict, tight, keep your glutes engaged, range of motion, use some power and explosiveness, and that should keep you inching forward in the strength department so you can go beyond that red band eventually. All right, I'm going to shut up about that. I think I've said my piece with it. F, how you doing, F? Good to see you. I can never do more than 15 push-ups. Is this maybe a genetically limited range? Oh, God, no. Oh, hell no. Genetics will limit lots of things. Rep ranges are not one of them. So it kind of goes along with what I was just saying. You have limitations in other regards. Now, remember, though, what I was kind of alluding to with that Nordic curl example is you improve and progress not by doing more reps, but by doing the reps better. So with push-ups, like if you and I were to meet in person, I can almost guarantee you I would make technical changes about how you were doing it, not seeing how you're doing the push-up, of course, but this happens all the time at the bodyweight gym that I work at, where people are like, yeah, I'm really good at push-ups. I'm like, good, we're going to do it this way and keep your shoulders back and your elbows in and your bend, and suddenly they're like, Christ, I can only do like a third as many reps as I was doing before. I'm like, awesome, now we're getting somewhere kind of thing. If anything, I always encourage people, drop your repetitions. I don't want a lot of repetitions. Lots of repetitions means an easy exercise. I want the reps low. I created a video several months ago called the 10 repetition challenge for calisthenics athletes. And initially people would be like, I can do 10 reps. I'm like, I know, that's the problem. I want you to do the exercise in such a way that you can't do 10 repetitions. 10 repetitions should be a limit you put on yourself. And if you can do more than that, you need a harder exercise, because it means that it's not adequate enough for enough tension in the muscle. Of course, that's an arbitrary number. I just pulled out, you could certainly still get stronger and bigger and stuff with 15 reps and 20 reps and even 30 reps and so forth. But generally, that was what I was trying to do, is put a limitation on yourself. So when you are looking at that 15 reps, get better at those reps. Get your hands in, get your shoulders way back. A lot of times stability is the limiting factor when it comes to weight and repetition ability. And make sure your glutes are tight, your abs are tight, your quads are tight, your arms are tight. You're clawing the floor with your fingertips. Your arms are in super, super close. Your forearms are rubbing against your rib cage. You're not reaching forward with your chin, like that sort of thing. Go all the way down to the floor, hold, and then blast up with a good amount of force while you're breathing out. That very well may drop your reps. And if that does, awesome. Now you're onto something. And in time, that will definitely make you a lot stronger. And 15 will be barely a warm up for you, because you're going to keep getting stronger. Very good. Let's see what else we got. I can answer for you. Simply Calisthenics coming on. I've been progressing my workouts by just adding reps. Will that come to a stop plateau at some point? I just enjoy training high reps. Oh, absolutely. Any sort of progression strategy will hit a plateau at some point. And this is why we want to have progression, a multivariable sort of thing. In my book, Smart Bodyweight Training, I outline 9 progressive elements, 9 ways you can improve and progress your calisthenics training. And you don't necessarily need to employ all of them by all means, but the point of that book was to show people that any one single thing is going to be very limited. In fact, in many ways, it's going to compromise your strength in the long run. Because when you have one variable as your standard metric for success, you're going to compromise several others. For example, range of motion is a metric, body position is a metric, speed and tempo is a metric, and so on and so forth. So if you came to me and you're like, I have a goal to do a gazillion, bajillion reps, I guarantee you at some point you're going to compromise those areas in order to get more repetitions. And that's not always a bad thing. Sometimes it's just fun to say, okay, I did these repetitions and stuff. But remember, it's not the reps that we're after. Our body does not know what repetitions are. It only knows 2 variables, time and tension. So when we are doing our exercise, we always want to be thinking in the back of our mind, how much tension is in the muscle? How long is it there for? Because that's fundamentally all you've got to work with. Everything else in your workout is a modification and an influence to those 2 things. So when you are using a progressive variable like repetitions and you're making progress and stuff, yeah, great, go. Keep going for it. But yes, eventually it will hold you back. And if you pursue it seriously enough and compromise things like technique and speed and tempo and stuff, it's actually going to cause you to regress. Which again, with the folks who come to the bodyweight gym, and I'm like, let's change these things around, and their repetitions go down. They feel frustrated. They feel a little bummed out because their reps aren't as high, but they don't know that I just gave them one hell of an upgrade to their push-up technique and the ability to continue making progress and getting stronger. So it's something that we want to look at, a multifaceted approach where you're making progress in many different ways, not just one. Very good. Let's see what Mariano has got coming on here. How's it going, man? Hey, Matt, in the second round of 2 sets, does the drill have to be a finisher style? No. So here's what he's talking about. And this, I'm glad you brought this up, because over time, I've been using a GSC approach to this. So what he's talking about is in GSC, we have a strength phase and we have a finisher phase. And the strength phase is super heavy, low repetitions. Like I said earlier, like I don't like to go any more than 5. If I could do an exercise for more than 5 reps, I know it's too easy, kind of thing. Sometimes in an exercise, if I'm working on practice, like my archer push-ups and stuff, I'm working on getting my shoulders back. I'll get to as many as 8, but that's real light. That's really, really light for me for that. So that's strength phase. Now, finisher phase, you want a lighter exercise to go and burn out the muscle, because it's a hell of a lot easier to burn out the muscle a lot easier with a lighter exercise and get a good satisfying pump in the muscles. And that's going to be lighter so you can get double digits. And I always recommend 10, 12, 15, 20 reps for doing that sort of thing. So here's what I've noticed just myself doing in my own workouts is the first exercise I do is typically lower repetitions, like 8 to 10 max kind of stuff. I'm really pushing that number a little bit. And then the second exercise I'm doing, because remember we're doing something else, then I'll go with something a little bit lighter. So typically what I've been doing is like a weighted dip approach or a weighted pull-up for the first round of push-pull squat. And then the second one is like just standard push-up or rows, which are going to be an easier exercise for me and usually gets twice as many repetitions, and I'm just burning it out. So not necessarily the second set, but the second round would be more of a finisher style sort of thing. And it's also a really good way to kind of gut check yourself on how heavy you think you're really going. Because sometimes you'll do a work set with like weighted dips. This happened to me the other day. I was doing weighted dips. I had a 30-pound kettlebell on suspension straps because, again, I want it hard. It's easier on bars. I don't want easy. I want hard. So I was going for my dips, and I think I got like 12 repetitions. Sorry, I misspoke. I got like 8 repetitions, 30-pound kettlebell on suspension straps. And I was like, okay, good. And then on the second set, I was like, all right, here we go. This is it. This is for all the marbles. Here we go. And I got like 15 reps on the second one because I had to go there mentally. And I was like, oh, hell. Like I thought 30 pounds on a dip was heavy enough and everything, but I just did 15 reps. No, Matt, you've been undertraining yourself. Like you need way more than 30 pounds. You just did 15 repetitions. That's a lightweight if you could get 15 reps. No. So now in my logbook, of course, I'm writing down at least 40 pounds because it can go heavier than I thought I could. So it's a good gut check to be like, what you think is heavy, and then you're getting all those reps and you're like, what you think is heavy is not really heavy. It does not mean what you think it means, kind of thing, where it's a good way to understand what you can really do, which is enlightening. It's one of those things that is more about discovering what you really can do. As I tell my clients all the time, strength is not built, it is discovered. You're stronger than you realize. You have the ability to bring more to the exercise than you know. I guarantee you, this happens all the time, is people will tell me this is all I can do, like 15 push-ups, that's all I can do, or this is as heavy as I could go and stuff. And it's not even close. It's not even close. I guarantee you have so much more potential. And this is not some sort of motivational speech, like everybody deserves to be strong kind of mumbo jumbo. This is just a God's honest truth. Like I've been a trainer for over 20 years now. I've been doing this long enough that when people come to me and they're like, this is my limitation, it's almost never the limitation. It's almost never even close to half of their potential because they have so much more. They just don't know it. And that's why I always tell people strength is not built. It is discovered. You have the ability to do that, which is why I love working with new people who are fairly new to strength training because they have no idea how strong they can get. They have no idea what their potential is. So they'll come to me and they're like, I can't do this. I can't do that. They've got all these limitations and we just knock them down one after the other over time. I'm like, oh, you don't think you can do that, huh? Bang, knock it down. Oh, you don't think you can do real push-ups on the floor, huh? Bang, down you go. You just got 12, and they're just like, oh my God, I had no idea. I'm like, yeah. And that's just a facet of human nature is we truly don't understand our real potential and strength. And it's my job as a coach to help you discover it, but you already have it. In exercise physiology, we learn basically that when your body gets stronger and bigger and more and stuff, you're not really changing much about your body. For the most part, the muscle fibers you have when you're bigger and stronger, the same fibers you have now. For your nervous system, same nerves. The mitochondrial density and stuff is going to change a little bit and stuff, but for the most part, your actual makeup, your physical self doesn't really change all that much. It adapts and modifies what you already have. So you already have the muscle and the nervous system and everything that can be built to a higher level, but you don't like add to it, so to speak. It's not like you bring something to your body. Your body just adapts and changes what it already has to acquire those abilities, which is amazing when you really think about it. It is fantastic to know that we are discovering what we truly have rather than something we bring into ourselves. All right, next question. Is it best to use more difficult exercise in the first set and easier variation in the second? Example, I do less dips than push-ups. So I do dips on the first, push-ups on the second. Yeah, exactly what I was kind of alluding to and talking about. I would keep to the same exercise for both sets though. So remember, we got sets and rounds. So the first round, push-pull squat, you would do dips. And you do the same exercise for both sets. All right, so that's the whole round. And then on the next time you visit push-pull squat, then you would do push-ups and stuff. But you're basically doing the same exercise twice is the basic idea there. Thank you very, very much. I'm sure other people were asking that, wondering about that as well. Paul Bruce, good to see you, my friend. Would you consider it wise, or at least not ill-advised, to train straight limb movements, front rear flies, single leg deadlift kicks, or strength, nor hypertrophy? If so, how? Okay, so good. So it still falls into push-pull squat or flexion extension lateral. So front rear flies, so chest flies, this is push chain, it's working your chest. Rear flies, pull chain, it's working your traps. Single leg deadlifts and stuff, that would be extension chain. So it's just, you just mix and match for the chain work. So if you were, for example, like, okay, I did dips in my first round. Now let's change it up. What you could do is create a little mini circuit of the trifecta from grind style calisthenics, where you have chest flies, tricep extensions, and then, you know, shoulder flexion on a suspension strap. That's a fun thing to do. It doesn't have to just be one exercise because each one is a single joint movement. So that's a good way to go about it. That's a good quote finisher from it as well. So deadlifts, extension chain, fantastic kind of thing. So it would be, yeah, definitely something I recommend. Absolutely. Play with it. But remember, we're still talking push-pull squat, flexion extension, and lateral. It doesn't go into some separate different category sort of thing because you're using the same muscles. Dave is saying, funny story about mental limitations. My wife was deadlifting only like 50 pounds, but one day I left weight on the bar. I think it was 140 or something. She did the same number of repetitions. Oh, yes, that is a good story. Thank you, Dave. It's amazing how our perception changes our reality, isn't it? So here's another story, same exact thing, but in the opposite direction. One of the first gyms I ever worked at had these old pre-core ellipticals. And I mean old, I mean they were literally like the first ellipticals in the state of Vermont kind of thing. Like they were definitely a old model, so old that they broke down. They had a resistance mechanism, but it wasn't a magnet or anything that moved. It was an electromagnet on a coil. It was an electric coil that created the resistance. And they were so old that even in my database of part suppliers, you know, the type who were like Indiana Jones, like we can get parts for anything. Like if you wanted the ancient weight machines used by the ancient Egyptians, we can still get parts for that. So I'd call them up and be like, we got pre-core 944s. Do you have resistance mechanism? And they're like, dear God, no, man. Throw that junk away. Click. So we had these ellipticals that had no resistance because the resistance mechanism was completely shot. In fact, I removed them from the unit. But they still worked fine. The mechanisms were still moving, and the electronic board up on top, the control board, still worked perfectly fine, including the buttons and the readout. So if you hit resistance up, the little window that said resistance would still go up from, I think it was like 1 to 10. So people would get on these ellipticals, and I'm not talking for a short time, like years, we had these ellipticals with no resistance at all, zero. Like you ride a bike downhill and you have no resistance on the pedals. That's what it felt like to use these ellipticals. But people would get on these things and they would put up the resistance on the console, and it would say your resistance is now at level 7, and they'd be like, oh man, I'm really pushing it today. And they'd come to me all the time going like, wow, I really went all the way up to level 8 today, not knowing there's no resistance on any of them. But people swore they were working harder. It's a really funny thing about human perception and how it's fun to mess around with. It's really fun to manipulate. Paul is coming in. Hey, Matt, progress update on your suspension calisthenics book. Yes, it is coming along just fine. I don't mean to brag, but I think I'm more excited about it than you are. You're probably right. I've got a lot on my plate these days. I have 2 gym jobs. I've got things here at RDP that I'm working on and stuff. And it's not so much I've been slacking, but it's one of those things where I've just had so much on my mind that, at the end of the day, I'll be in bed. I'm like, oh, I didn't get those images for the book done today kind of thing. So I promise I am getting big time overload on it because I have incentive. Now, sometimes you need a little carrot on the end of the stick. As many of you know, I'm kind of an AFOL. I like Lego sets and stuff. And Lego just came out with they're coming out with a new set that's right straight down the barrel at my generation. They're coming out with a large Lego Optimus Prime transformer. So it's a Lego Optimus Prime, and yes, it does actually transform into the truck. And as soon as I saw that, I was like, oh, shut up and take my money. I have to have that because I had the original toy when I was a kid. So now I'm saying, no, I'm not going to get one yet. I can't get it until I finish this book. So now every day I'm like, yes, I want to get this book done because when the book is finished, then I get to go because we got a kick-ass Lego store here in Colorado that I love to go to. And that'll be a lot of fun. So that's my motivation beyond getting the book out to you and getting it done. So anyway, back to the task at hand. Andre asking, when using this approach, should we be doing resistance in what rep range? Is it more productive to do those 2 sets intensely with an exercise you can do more than 10, 15, 20, lower rep range, and so on? So again, with the GSC format, I recommend if you're going to go heavier, go earlier with that because your nervous system needs to be a little bit more fresh for that. If you go with, like, say, push-ups and you're like, all right, I can do 50 push-ups for 2 sets. Awesome. And then you're like, weighted dips. Here we go. Really heavy. Now, you just burned yourself out. You're not going to get as much. So you want to go heavy first, then lighter afterwards in that sequence. That doesn't need you have to go in that regard. Some people, they're just like, I feel really good going 10 to 20 reps. Great. Do it in that regard. Do 10 to 15, 20 reps or so for all of the sets. Awesome. If that just was kind of your jam. But if you're going to go heavy and light and have 2 different rep ranges, go the heavy one first. And that will be fun. HBN, good question. Do you train legs on a different day or more of a full body workout? You could do either way. So one of the reasons why people like to do the split of squat chain and then the lateral on a separate day or upper lower is because it gives them just the ability to put more attention and energy into legs. Legs just takes a lot of energy. It's big muscles, creates quite the metabolic demand. And I know a lot of people when they're like, oh, I do a leg workout, but then I'm just tired and I don't seem to have as much for my push and pull. That's good. If you want to do it on a different day, do it. As long as you get it a couple times a week, you're golden, however you prefer. A lot of times the structure of a workout and split train stuff boils largely down to just personal preference. Just, I don't know, what do you like? What do you like to do? And for a long time, I've done that myself, is I'll have a dedicated leg day, just so I know I can bring as much as I can to the actual leg workout. Samsar0125, how's it going? I've been doing higher reps as of late, 20 to 30 in an effort to groove my mind-muscle connection. I really get a pump feel the engagement during low reps with higher load. What are your thoughts? Oh, absolutely. If you came to me and you're like, I love that pump and I just want to burn the muscle with the fire of 1,000 suns, high repetition, my friend. Here we go. The first time I ever did kind of a high rep, high volume format was years ago when I worked at a gym. I had some friends and they would all work out together. And then I would just kind of, be cleaning equipment near them. And then I would just inevitably fall into one of their workouts. And we like to do timed sets where we'd be like, okay, you're going to do this exercise for 90 seconds, which if you've ever timed how long you actually do a strength exercise is like a fortnight. Is like, oh my God, like even 20 seconds sometimes is a long time. So 90 seconds of like dumbbell bench press, and it'd be like 45 seconds and we'd just be screaming bloody murder with a pair of 40s and just high rep and burn the mother living hell out. And yeah, we'd be sore as hell the next day and the pump would be insane. So yeah, it's very good to get that. But that's not to say that you need a pump in order to grow, or that the higher load stuff is not going to be effective. Of course, it is very much so. But yeah, it is very satisfying, isn't it? Joshua Bush, how's it going? I've recently acquired some kettlebells. I'm really enjoying single arm shoulder press. Yeah, it's a good one with the kettlebells. I find using one arm, I can focus on the shoulder more, and it's a great core workout as well. Absolutely. I'm a huge fan of unilateral exercises, much for that reason. When it comes to some things are better bilateral. I mean, like dips, you're going to get bilateral. It's going to have to be. But yeah, single arm overhead with that sort of thing, a big fan of it myself for exactly those reasons. It's just a really good way to also just kind of stabilize, but you want to make sure you're not really wrenching your body around sort of thing. Remember, with a kettlebell, we do not press it like this. You have it in the rack position here. Hand is really nice and close. I like to keep it near the chin, and you go in like a J format sort of deal. And you have a rotation. So it's like here, maybe a little bit slightly supinated, and then you have rotation up and around. And ever since I started doing the kettlebells, I pretty much almost always, even if someone's pressing with dumbbells, always this format. I almost never have people do this, just because this is so much more easy on the joint. It really helps to improve that scapular stability, and it just works the joints to a bigger range. The muscles get more engaged. It's just, why not do this all the time? I see no reason to do this unless you're working with a barbell, in which case I'd be like, unless you have to do it with a barbell, better with the hand weights and the kettlebell sort of thing. Probably the better way to go that I would recommend. Anyway, it's easier to work harder. If there's one thing that this workout format is about, it's how do we make it as easy as possible to work the muscle as hard as possible. We don't want to make it challenging to do the job we have before us, because we can make things hard 100 different ways. I could stick you in a hot room, shine bright lights in your eyes, have the handles wrapped in like barbed wire and stuff, and make it really uncomfortable, play annoying music through loudspeakers while you're doing there's a million ways I can make this hard on you, but it needs to be hard for the right reasons. And that's the mistake that I made years ago, was that just because it's hard or challenging doesn't mean it's effective. In many cases, if it's hard for the wrong reasons, then it's actually less effective. You're going backwards. So when it comes to our strength training, again, we got those two fundamental variables. We got time, we got tension. If we want strength, we need tension. If we want more of an endurance sort of thing, we need time or volume. And if we want muscle, we kind of got to increase both to some degree. So the format of this workout is all about making it easier to work harder. It's really hard to work at a high intensity when you have a high volume approach or an open-ended approach like I've always used with GSC, where it's like just use the sets as you see fit until you start to erode. But when you have that 2-set maximum, you've just made it a hell of a lot easier to work a hell of a lot harder on the intensity front, because you have to. You're not giving yourself much other choice. Plus, mentally, it's a lot easier too. I've had clients come up to me and they're like, this is so much easier just mindset-wise, because I don't have to be like, oh, how many more sets of this do I have to do? How many more times do I have this? How much more do I have? They're not looking at the clock. They're like, dude, all I got to do is 2 sets of this and it's done. Like if they have an exercise they don't particularly like, for example, like a squat or lunges or whatever, they're like, I just need to make it through 2 sets. That's it. I just need 2. And that used to be a big thing with like mountain biking for me, because I used to do the training races that were 4 laps. Each one was 5K. And each lap was just absolute all I've got. And believe me, that first set or first lap was like, okay, I'm getting in the groove. That second one was hell. mentally, because it's like I'm already tired and I'm on lap 2. I still have 2 more to go. Oh my God, I don't know if I can do this. Then your third one, you're like, but the fourth one's like, yay, it's the last one. I can definitely do this. So with 2 sets, you're first and last. That's it. You get rid of all the stuff in the middle and you're like, this is the first one. Good. I like this exercise. I'm getting in the groove. I'm getting something done. And then it's like, oh, it's the last one already. Great. Fantastic. End of the road. So it's really easy mentally to just kind of get through the workout as well. Plus, I know a lot of people, they like the variety of it too. Because a lot of times in calisthenics, are like, this is the one push-up I do, or this is the one arm exercise or pull exercise I do. But this gives you the opportunity to have more variety. So it makes it fun. It makes it playful. And that's not even if you don't want to even do calisthenics all the time. You can do like the kettlebell press. Like, okay, I've got like push-ups for the first exercise, and then the second time I do push-pull squat, and you got the kettlebell press. That's pushing exercise. Fantastic. So it gives you the variety there. It's a good combination. You're getting a lot more of a variety stimulus in your body. It's good for your joints. It's good for your mindset. It's good for the enjoyment of the workout. And you're going to work out at a higher intensity. So in so many ways, it's just win, 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 all pros and benefits. And you just kind of have to stay on track a little bit. So don't forget, though, check out over at reddeltaproject.com. My scoreboard progression log, the ebook there. It's a free ebook that gives you the ability to track workouts in a more flexible approach. I highly recommend checking out that scoreboard progression log format for recording and logging these workouts, because they can be a little bit more flexible in their approach. So that's what I highly recommend. And also the chain training ebook there as well. If you haven't read that, all of my books cover chain training, because it's just the fundamental approach that we use to approach training the body. It makes it real easy to program. Split training, full body training, micro workouts, grind style calisthenics, all of it's based on that chain training approach, which makes things a hell of a lot simpler and easier to use. So there you have it, folks, the new workout format. Don't forget, if you have questions, DM me at Red Delta Project on Instagram. Love to hear from you. And if you have any other further questions or update me on my progress or your progress, I love to hear about it. Don't forget to check out this week's sponsor as well, the Fat Poke folks over at the link down below for Next Level Fitness. You can read the first chapter of the ebook for free. And I will talk to you next week. Thank you very much for watching / listening, and have a great weekend. Till then, be fit and live free.